Hi, my name is Hannah Simpson, and this is my digital story of my 5 language and literacy artifacts. My first language and literacy artifacts are felt finger puppets that were introduced to me by my aunt. These puppets represent my formation of imaginative characters within fictional stories that I was told to by my aunt. This represents my literacy growth as my aunt started telling me stories when I was around 5, and each time I would see her until the age of 10, we would share our stories with each other. As the stories continued, my oral language was able to develop by the language and imagination of the stories becoming more complex and descriptive. In my future literacy teaching, I will be influenced by the oral stories told to me by my aunt by using finger puppets to encourage imagination in my class. As stated in Fellows and Oakley, the use of physical objects to tell stories to children helps them to picture and understand the meaning and main points of the story you are telling and imagine the characters and scenes in the story. Second language and literacy artifact is the book Koala Loo. I received this book as a present to me in kindergarten from Santa. This book represents the time that I was most engaged and interested in print literature and storybooks. This book represents my literacy growth over time as I have begun to read, and as the pictures were so detailed, it allowed me to easily understand what was happening on each page. The pictures acted as an aid to me when reading, as I could look to them for help when I was stuck on a word I did not know. In my future literacy teaching, I will be influenced by picture storybooks and authors such as Mem Fox as a way to develop the students' awareness to a variety of themes and issues, especially Australian animals and culture. As mentioned in Fellows and Oakley, having a range of books present in the classroom will give the students a variety of books to choose from that interest them and that will stimulate them to think of the world around them. My third language and literacy artifact is a puzzle picture storybook. Around the age of 10 to 12, when I was in the middle years of primary school, I became very disinterested in reading. I found it was very boring as there was nothing that appealed to my developed kinesthetic way of learning literacy. The puzzle books allowed me to interact within the novel and make sense of the accompanying pictures to help me further understand the story. The puzzle books represent my literacy growth as it was an age that I realised my way of learning was very hands-on and engaging. This allowed me to understand that there are multiple ways that people develop their language and literacy. My future literacy teaching will be influenced by my experience with jigsaw puzzle books, as I will ensure that my classroom is equipped with an array of books that appeal to kinesthetic learners, and as mentioned in Fellows and Oakley, it is important for the child to improve their multisensory language and literacy learning. In Year 7, I was first introduced to technology in the classroom. I chose the computer as my fourth language and literacy artifact as it was a new way of learning that benefited my ability to improve my language and literacy both positively as well as negatively. I was already reading very small amounts of novels compared to other kids going into high school. The computer represents the literacy growth I made from not reading to listening to informative documentaries or videos about class-related subjects. Although I was not improving my literacy and language because things like spell check and grammar editor were being used in my everyday schooling, I was still able to expand my language and literacy word bank and knowledge by listening to TED Talks or other informative videos on YouTube. With the use of electronics in the classroom only becoming more popular and accepted, I will be influenced by my experiences to embrace what technology has become and use it to my educational advantage. Using technology to support the subject areas and having exceptions around the use of technology in my classroom for all of my students will allow for the computers and other technology to be used correctly and educationally. My last language and literacy artifact are audiobooks. Going into Year 11, I started to be given set texts that I had to read again. Again, this was very difficult to me as I found reading very frustrating as I could not comprehend the story. Audiobooks represent the way that I began to interact with novels again. I followed along in the novel, highlighting and listening to the audiobook. This gave me the ability to understand the story as well as reading along and making notes that would help me in my assessment. This made me understand that literacy can be learned in many ways and does not just have to be reading a novel or print. The use of ebooks in my past learning experiences will influence my teaching by allowing students to have access to audiobooks in my classroom. Also, Felix and Oakley state that teaching students to highlight will allow them to improve their language and literacy by recognizing the unknown or unfamiliar words and creating a glossary or follow up research once the chapter or book is complete.